Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of psychology, where we uncover some of the most groundbreaking ideas that have shaped how we understand human behavior. Whether you're a psychology buff or just curious about what makes us tick, you're in for a ride. From the roots of behaviorism to cutting-edge theories about the mind, let's explore 25 big ideas in psychology that will challenge your thinking and might even change the way you view the world. So, let's get started. 1. Behaviorism. Imagine a world where your behavior is entirely shaped by your environment. That's the central premise of behaviorism, a school of thought that dominated psychology for much of the 20th century. Developed by pioneers like John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, behaviorism emphasizes that we can only study observable behavior, leaving out internal thoughts, emotions, and feelings. According to behaviorists, we are essentially the sum of our experiences, and our actions are responses to external stimuli in our environment. Whether it's a reaction to a reward, a punishment, or a specific event, behaviorism suggests that everything we do is learned through conditioning. For example, imagine a child touching a hot stove and getting burned. The pain creates an association between the stove and the danger of being hurt, leading the child to avoid touching the stove in the future. This is a simple form of learning called classical conditioning. But behaviorism isn't just about avoiding pain. It's also about shaping good behavior through rewards. Operant conditioning, a theory advanced by Skinner, shows that actions can be reinforced or discouraged by consequences. If a child receives praise for doing their homework, they're more likely to repeat the behavior. Similarly, if a behavior is met with punishment, like being scolded, it's less likely to happen again. Behaviorism's principles extend far beyond childhood learning. In education, therapists use behaviorism to help shape desirable behaviors in students and clients. In marketing, advertisers use behaviorist techniques to create advertisements that encourage consumer behavior. The idea is clear. Change your environment, and you can change behavior. That's the power of behaviorism, one of psychology's most influential ideas. 2. Classical conditioning. Have you ever heard a song that takes you right back to a specific memory, or felt a certain way just by walking into a familiar room? If so, you've experienced classical conditioning in action. Developed by Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov, classical conditioning is the process by which we learn to associate two unrelated stimuli, leading to a learned response. Pavlov's famous experiment with dogs demonstrated how this works. He discovered that when he paired the sound of a bell with the presentation of food, the dogs would start salivating just at the sound of the bell, even when no food was presented. This wasn't something the dogs were born knowing. They learned to associate the bell with food. The sound of the bell had become a conditioned stimulus, and the salivation was a conditioned response. This concept applies to humans as well. For instance, if you've ever felt nervous just walking into a doctor's office, it's because your mind has learned to associate the place with discomfort or pain, even if you're not currently being treated. The room itself has become a conditioned stimulus, and your anxiety is the conditioned response. Classical conditioning explains a lot of emotional reactions we have to situations, places, or people. It's why we might feel anxiety before an exam or joy when we see a familiar face. It's also the foundation of how advertising works. Think about a commercial that uses upbeat music and beautiful imagery to make you feel happy. Over time, that brand becomes associated with those positive emotions. Whether it's the smell of cookies baking or the sound of a specific song, classical conditioning shows that our experiences, both good and bad, are deeply tied to learned associations. And those associations can last a lifetime. 3. Operant conditioning. When we think of how our behavior is shaped, we often turn to operant conditioning, a theory developed by B.F. Skinner that focuses on how we learn voluntary behaviors through consequences. Unlike classical conditioning, which deals with automatic reactions, operant conditioning explains how we modify our behavior based on the rewards or punishments that follow our actions. Skinner's theory is rooted in the idea that behaviors can be reinforced, increased, or punished, decreased, depending on what happens afterward. For example, think about how a child learns to clean their room. If they receive praise or a treat after completing the task, they are likely to repeat the behavior. This is positive reinforcement, adding something pleasant to encourage a behavior. On the other hand, if the child gets scolded or loses privileges for leaving their room messy, that's punishment, and the child will likely avoid the behavior in the future. But operant conditioning goes beyond just rewards and punishments. Skinner introduced the concept of shaping, which involves reinforcing small steps that lead to a desired behavior. For instance, if you want a pet to learn a new trick, you reward the pet every time they get closer to performing the trick, reinforcing incremental progress. Over time, these small steps build up to the final behavior. Operant conditioning is everywhere in our daily lives. From schools where good behavior is rewarded with extra recess time, to workplaces where employees are motivated by bonuses or promotions, the idea that rewards and punishments influence behavior is incredibly powerful. Whether it's motivating a child to do their homework, encouraging a dog to sit, or even influencing consumer behavior, operant conditioning gives us tools to shape the behavior of ourselves and others. It's a simple but profound idea. Actions are determined by their consequences. 4. Cognitive dissonance. Have you ever found yourself doing something that contradicts your values or beliefs and felt uncomfortable afterward? That feeling is called cognitive dissonance, a theory developed by psychologist Leon Festinger. According to cognitive dissonance theory, when we experience inconsistency between our beliefs, attitudes, and actions, it creates psychological tension, or dissonance. This tension is uncomfortable, so we are motivated to reduce it in some way. For example, imagine someone who values being healthy but regularly smokes cigarettes. The person will likely feel discomfort because their behavior, smoking, contradicts their belief, being healthy. To resolve this tension, they might change their behavior, quit smoking, change their belief, convince themselves that smoking isn't so bad, or justify their actions in some other way, like claiming smoking helps reduce stress. The core idea of cognitive dissonance is that people can't stand having inconsistent thoughts or behaviors, and will try to resolve the inconsistency to feel more at ease. Festinger's theory is widely applied in various aspects of life. For instance, in marketing, advertisers often tap into cognitive dissonance to create demand. They might point out the inconsistencies in our behaviors, making us feel the need to resolve them by purchasing a product. Similarly, cognitive dissonance helps explain why people sometimes double down on their beliefs, even when faced with contradictory evidence. It's not about logic, it's about reducing discomfort. This concept has helped psychologists understand how people cope with conflicting information and why we sometimes make decisions that don't seem entirely rational. Whether it's buying a product, justifying a choice, or maintaining relationships, cognitive dissonance shapes our attitudes and behaviors in profound ways, showing that the mind works not just to seek truth, but to preserve a sense of internal harmony. 5. The unconscious mind. In the early 20th century, Sigmund Freud introduced the revolutionary idea that much of our behavior is influenced by unconscious forces, thoughts, memories, and desires hidden deep within our minds. According to Freud, we are often unaware of these unconscious influences, but they drive much of what we do. He believed that the unconscious mind was a repository for repressed memories and forbidden desires that we may have pushed aside because they were too painful or socially unacceptable. Freud's theory suggested that dreams, slips of the tongue, known as Freudian slips, and even jokes reveal hidden parts of our unconscious mind, offering a window into our true feelings. For example, if someone consistently forgets to do something they claim is important, Freud might suggest that the task holds some unconscious significance that they are trying to avoid. Freud divided the mind into three parts: the id, which represents our primal desires and instincts; the ego, which is the rational part of the mind that mediates between the id and reality; and the superego, which holds our moral and ethical standards. This theory suggested that our behaviors result from the interplay between these three parts of the mind, with the unconscious playing a key role. Despite Freud's controversial methods and theories, his ideas on the unconscious mind had a lasting impact on psychology, particularly in the development of psychoanalysis. Freud's work opened the door to exploring the deeper, often hidden aspects of human behavior, helping to shape modern psychotherapy and laying the groundwork for understanding how unconscious influences affect our mental health and decision-making. Even today, Freud's ideas about the unconscious continue to resonate in everyday life. Whether it's understanding how past experiences shape current behavior, or looking at how repressed memories affect our emotional responses, the unconscious mind remains a powerful force in psychology. Freud's legacy is controversial, but undeniably foundational in the way we think about the mind's hidden depths. 6. Neuroplasticity. Have you ever heard the phrase, "You can teach an old dog new tricks"? That idea captures the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Once thought to be fixed after early development, the brain is now understood to be far more adaptable. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to rewire itself in response to learning, injury, or experience, enabling it to recover from damage, acquire new skills, and even compensate for lost functions. For example, if someone loses their vision, the areas of the brain responsible for processing visual information may be repurposed for heightened sensitivity to sound or touch. This phenomenon demonstrates the brain's remarkable capacity to adapt and reorganize itself. Neuroplasticity plays a significant role in rehabilitation, where stroke victims can regain lost abilities by engaging in exercises that stimulate neural pathways. This concept also has profound implications for lifelong learning. Whether you're learning a new language, developing a musical skill, or acquiring a new hobby, neuroplasticity shows that the brain can continue to grow and adapt at any age. It underscores the idea that cognitive abilities and memory are not fixed, but can be nurtured and expanded throughout our lives. 7. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What motivates us? According to Abraham Maslow, our needs follow a hierarchy, starting with the most basic, physical needs and progressing toward more complex psychological ones. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often depicted as a pyramid, with physiological needs, food, water, shelter, at the base, and self-actualization, the desire to reach one's fullest potential, at the top. According to Maslow, before we can pursue higher-level needs, such as relationships, self-esteem, or personal growth, our basic needs must first be met. The pyramid starts with physiological needs, which are fundamental for survival, such as breathing, eating, and sleeping. Once these are fulfilled, individuals move to the next level, safety needs, including personal security and financial stability. From there, the focus shifts to social needs, including friendship, intimacy, and a sense of belonging. Then comes esteem needs, which involve the desire for self-respect and the recognition of others. Finally, at the pinnacle of Maslow's pyramid is self-actualization, the pursuit of achieving one's potential and the realization of personal dreams and capabilities. Maslow argued that few people ever reach self-actualization, but the idea that human motivation is driven by unmet needs helps explain many aspects of human behavior. For example, a person struggling with financial insecurity is unlikely to focus on personal growth or creative endeavors because their primary concern is survival. The theory is also used in therapy, business, education, and even in the workplace, where understanding the stages of motivation can help improve employee satisfaction and performance. Maslow's hierarchy emphasizes the idea that human beings are motivated by more than just survival. It's a lifelong journey toward fulfillment and self-discovery. 8. The Big Five personality traits. Why do some people seem to thrive in social situations, while others prefer solitude? Why are some more organized than others? The Big Five personality traits, also known as the five-factor model, provide a framework for understanding human personality. These 5 dimensions, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, represent the broad spectrum of traits that make up who we are. Openness to experience refers to how curious and imaginative someone is. People high in openness tend to be creative and open-minded, while those low in this trait may prefer routine and traditional thinking. Conscientiousness reflects how organized, responsible, and dependable someone is. High conscientiousness is linked to strong work ethic and discipline, while low conscientiousness might be associated with a more spontaneous, less structured lifestyle. Extroversion measures how outgoing or reserved a person is. Extroverts thrive in social settings, while introverts may find energy in solitude. Agreeableness captures how cooperative, empathetic, and compassionate someone is. High agreeableness is linked with kindness and generosity, while low agreeableness may suggest a more competitive or critical nature. Neuroticism refers to emotional stability. High neuroticism is associated with more frequent negative emotions like anxiety or sadness, while low neuroticism suggests calmness and emotional resilience. The Big Five model has been widely used in psychology to assess and understand human personality in both clinical settings and everyday life. It provides valuable insights into how we approach relationships, work, and stress, and it helps explain why people behave differently in similar situations. Whether it's navigating personal challenges or evaluating job candidates, understanding these 5 traits allows for deeper self-awareness and better interaction with others. It's one of the most researched and reliable models in personality psychology, providing a framework to help us understand the complexities of human behavior. 9. The halo effect. Ever been so impressed by someone's appearance that you assume they must also be smart, friendly, and competent? That's the halo effect at work. First introduced by psychologist Edward Thorndike in the 1920s, the halo effect is a cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person influences how we perceive their specific traits. Essentially, if we like someone based on one positive attribute, such as their looks or charm, we tend to assume they possess other positive qualities as well. This bias can work both ways. For instance, if someone has an attractive appearance, we might believe they are also more intelligent, capable, or even kinder, even though these traits have nothing to do with appearance. On the other hand, if a person makes a negative first impression, we might unfairly assume they are unpleasant or untrustworthy in all areas, even if we don't have enough evidence to make that judgment. The halo effect has real-world implications in many areas, from hiring practices to marketing to education. For example, students tend to perform better when their teachers like them, simply because the teacher's positive impression influences how they evaluate the student's performance. The halo effect also plays a significant role in social and professional life. In the workplace, someone who is well-liked or physically attractive may receive more opportunities, while others might be overlooked despite their qualifications. The key takeaway? Be aware of how first impressions, whether positive or negative, can shape your view of others, and try to evaluate people on a broader set of criteria rather than relying on a single trait. 10. Social identity theory. At the heart of human social behavior is the desire to belong to groups, whether those groups are based on nationality, religion, political beliefs, or even fandoms. Social identity theory, developed by psychologist Henri Tajfel, explains how group membership shapes our identity and influences our attitudes toward others. According to this theory, we define ourselves based on the groups we belong to, and these social categories provide a sense of belonging and pride. For example, someone who identifies as a New Yorker may feel a sense of camaraderie with other New Yorkers, even if they don't know them personally. But here's where it gets interesting. Social identity theory also explains how our group identity can lead to in-group bias, a tendency to favor our own group over others. When people identify strongly with their group, they may see members of other groups, outgroups, as less worthy or inferior. This can lead to prejudice, stereotyping, and even discrimination. In extreme cases, group identification can lead to intergroup conflict, as we see in everything from political divides to international wars. Tajfel's theory helps us understand why people often see the world in terms of us versus them, and why group dynamics can shape so much of our behavior. Social identity theory has been widely applied in areas such as understanding prejudice, promoting social inclusion, and improving intergroup relations. It highlights the need for us to recognize our biases and work toward reducing division, whether it's in our communities or on a global scale. 11. Attachment theory. When we think about relationships, whether with our parents, romantic partners, or friends, attachment plays a fundamental role in how we connect with others. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, explores the emotional bonds that form between infants and their caregivers, and how these bonds influence behavior later in life. Bowlby argued that the early relationships we form in childhood provide the foundation for all future relationships. When children feel safe and secure with their caregivers, they are more likely to explore the world around them with confidence and develop healthy social skills. But what happens when this bond is disrupted? Bowlby identified different types of attachment based on how children respond to the presence or absence of their caregivers. For example, children with a secure attachment are typically calm and comfortable when their caregivers are present, and they're easily soothed when their caregivers leave and return. On the other hand, children with an insecure attachment might exhibit anxiety, fear, or anger, either clinging to their caregivers or avoiding them altogether. These early experiences can have a lasting impact, influencing how individuals form and maintain relationships as adults. The theory has profound implications for understanding everything from childhood development to mental health. For instance, research suggests that individuals with insecure attachments may struggle with trust and emotional intimacy in adult relationships. Attachment theory also informs therapeutic practices, particularly in helping people resolve past trauma and build healthier relationships. Whether you're trying to understand your own patterns of behavior or building a stronger relationship with a loved one, attachment theory highlights the importance of secure emotional bonds in shaping our capacity to connect with others. 12. Cognitive revolution. For much of psychology's early history, the focus was solely on observable behavior, leaving out the inner workings of the mind. But in the 1950s and 1960s, a major shift occurred: the cognitive revolution. This movement, led by thinkers like Noam Chomsky, Ulrich Neisser, and George Miller, reintroduced the study of mental processes such as perception, memory, language, and problem-solving. Essentially, the cognitive revolution marked the rebirth of interest in how the mind works. What sparked this change? Advances in technology, especially the development of computers, helped psychologists begin thinking of the mind like a machine that processes information. Just as a computer takes input, processes it, and produces an output, so too does the human mind. This shift also coincided with the rise of cognitive psychology, which focuses on understanding mental processes rather than just external behavior. This approach allowed psychologists to study things like attention, decision-making, and memory, providing a much more comprehensive picture of how humans think. The cognitive revolution had a profound impact on many areas of psychology. It led to the development of cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people manage their thoughts to improve their emotions and behaviors. It also sparked a new era of research into artificial intelligence, AI, as cognitive scientists sought to understand how humans process information and learn. The idea that the mind actively processes information has had an enormous influence not just in psychology, but also in fields like education, artificial intelligence, and neuroscience. Essentially, the cognitive revolution redefined the mind, showing that it's not just a passive recipient of external stimuli, but an active processor of information. 13. Social learning theory. Have you ever learned how to cook a new recipe just by watching a video or mimicking a friend's actions? That's the essence of social learning theory, developed by Albert Bandura. Unlike earlier behaviorists who emphasized direct reinforcement and punishment, Bandura proposed that we can learn by observing others without experiencing reinforcement ourselves. He demonstrated this idea in his famous Bobo doll experiment, where children who observed adults acting aggressively toward an inflatable clown doll were more likely to imitate that aggressive behavior themselves. The key takeaway? Learning doesn't always require direct experience. It can happen simply by watching others. Bandura's theory introduced the concept of modeling, where we imitate the behavior of people around us, especially those we admire or view as authoritative. This can apply to all kinds of behaviors, whether it's a child learning to tie their shoes by watching their parent, or a teenager picking up social cues by observing their peers. Social learning theory also emphasizes the importance of self-efficacy, or the belief in one's ability to succeed. According to Bandura, observing others succeed or fail influences our own sense of self-efficacy, which in turn affects our motivation to try new things or persist in the face of challenges. Social learning theory has profound implications for how we teach, learn, and influence others. It's been applied in various fields, from education to therapy to media studies. For example, TV shows, advertisements, and social media can all shape behavior by providing models for how to act. Whether we realize it or not, we are constantly learning from those around us, often without direct instruction, showing how powerful social influence can be in shaping behavior. 14. Positive psychology. For much of psychology's history, the focus was on understanding and treating mental illness. But in the late 1990s, psychologist Martin Seligman introduced a new approach called positive psychology. This movement shifted the focus from pathology to well-being, emphasizing the study of strengths, happiness, and personal fulfillment. Rather than just fixing what's wrong, positive psychology asks, what can we do to thrive? Seligman's work on well-being identified 5 key elements of a fulfilling life: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and accomplishment, or what he called the PERMA model. The idea is that people can lead a fulfilling life not just by reducing negative feelings, but by actively cultivating positive experiences and strengths. For example, by focusing on gratitude, practicing mindfulness, and setting meaningful goals, individuals can improve their mental and emotional health. Positive psychology has transformed the way we think about mental health. Instead of just diagnosing and treating disorders, therapists now work with clients to build resilience, boost self-esteem, and increase overall happiness. Seligman's approach has had a huge influence on therapy, schools, and even workplaces, where a positive environment can lead to greater productivity and satisfaction. Whether it's fostering a sense of gratitude, building meaningful relationships, or finding flow in everyday activities, positive psychology has reshaped the conversation around what it means to live a good life. 15. Memory models. Memory is one of the most crucial cognitive processes we rely on every day. Without it, we wouldn't be able to recall anything, from the names of our loved ones to how to drive a car. The Atkinson-Shiffrin model of memory, proposed in 1968, is one of the most well-known models for understanding how memory works. According to this model, memory consists of 3 stages: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Sensory memory briefly holds information from our senses, such as sight or sound, for just a fraction of a second. From there, relevant information is passed into short-term memory, which can hold a small amount of information for a limited time, typically around 15 to 30 seconds. If the information is rehearsed or encoded in a meaningful way, it is transferred into long-term memory, where it can be stored indefinitely. Long-term memory is virtually limitless in capacity, which is why we can remember events from our childhood or knowledge we learned years ago. This model of memory has helped psychologists and educators understand how to improve learning and recall. For instance, chunking, grouping information into meaningful units, can help increase the amount of information we can hold in short-term memory. Similarly, techniques like rehearsal, visualization, and elaboration can help encode information into long-term memory. The multi-store model proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin has had a profound impact on how we understand the mechanics of memory and how it influences behavior. Modern research on memory continues to build on this model, exploring how different types of memory, such as episodic and procedural memory, work, and how we can improve memory retention. Memory is a fundamental cognitive process that shapes our experiences, learning, and identity. By understanding how memory works, we can better utilize strategies to improve recall and optimize learning in various contexts, from education to everyday life. 16. Heuristics and biases. Our brains are constantly processing information, and sometimes, to make quick decisions, we rely on mental shortcuts known as heuristics. While these shortcuts are useful in many situations, they can also lead to biases that distort our judgment. Heuristics and biases are at the heart of cognitive psychology, especially in the work of psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. One common heuristic is the availability heuristic, where we make decisions based on information that is most readily available to us. For instance, if we frequently hear about airplane crashes in the news, we may overestimate the risk of flying, even though air travel is statistically very safe. Another well-known bias is the anchoring bias, where we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we encounter when making a decision. For example, if you see a jacket priced at $200 and then find the same jacket on sale for $100, You might think the $100 price is a great deal, despite the fact that $100 is still a lot of money for a jacket. These mental shortcuts allow us to make decisions quickly, but they can also cause us to overlook important details or make inaccurate judgments. Heuristics and biases influence everything from buying decisions to risk perception, and they can even impact how we perceive other people. Understanding heuristics and biases is essential because it can help us become more aware of the flawed thinking patterns that influence our decisions. By being mindful of these biases, we can take steps to avoid faulty conclusions and make more informed choices. In fact, the field of behavioral economics, which combines psychology and economics, is based on the premise that people don't always act rationally due to biases. So, next time you make a decision, ask yourself, am I relying on a mental shortcut, or am I truly considering all the facts? 17. The Bystander Effect. Have you ever witnessed an emergency situation and assumed that someone else would step in to help? If so, you've experienced the bystander effect, a psychological phenomenon where individuals are less likely to offer help in an emergency when other people are present. The bystander effect was first identified in the 1960s after the tragic murder of Kitty Genovese, a woman who was attacked outside her apartment while multiple witnesses watched without intervening. Psychologists John Darley and Biblatane conducted experiments to explore why people fail to act in such situations, and their findings revealed that the more people who are present, the less likely anyone is to help. This is known as diffusion of responsibility, the idea that when there are multiple bystanders, each person feels less personal responsibility to intervene. In their studies, Darley and Latane found that when individuals were alone, they were much more likely to help in an emergency than when they were in a group. This is because the presence of others creates a sense that someone else will take action. In fact, people often look to others to gauge how to respond in uncertain situations. This can be dangerous in emergencies when a quick response is crucial. The bystander effect has been observed in many situations, from car accidents to medical emergencies, showing just how powerful social dynamics are in influencing behavior. Understanding the bystander effect can help us become more proactive when we see someone in need. By being aware of this phenomenon, we can encourage ourselves and others to take action rather than waiting for someone else to step in. It also serves as a reminder of how group dynamics influence our decisions and behaviors, for better or worse. 18. Gestalt Psychology. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the whole image makes sense, even if you can't quite explain how? This is the essence of Gestalt Psychology, a theory that emphasizes the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Developed by psychologists such as Max Wertheimer, Kurt Koffka, and Wolfgang Köhler, Gestalt Psychology challenges the notion that we should analyze individual elements in isolation. Instead, it suggests that our minds naturally organize sensory information into meaningful patterns and structures. For example, when looking at a series of dots arranged in a circle, we don't just see isolated dots. Instead, our brain perceives the pattern as a circle, even though the circle itself doesn't physically exist. This phenomenon is explained by the Gestalt principles of perception, such as proximity, similarity, continuity, and closure, which guide how we interpret complex visual information. Gestalt psychology has been influential in many areas of psychology, including perception, problem solving, and learning. It suggests that our perception is not just a passive reception of stimuli, but an active process where our brain makes sense of the world by organizing information into familiar shapes or structures. This concept has applications in fields like design, advertising, and therapy, where understanding how people naturally group information can help create more effective visual communication and problem-solving strategies. 19. Cognitive behavioral therapy. When it comes to mental health, cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most effective and widely used therapeutic approaches. Developed by Aaron Beck in the 1960s, CBT focuses on helping individuals recognize and change negative thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to emotional distress. The core idea behind CBT is that our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are interconnected. If we change how we think, we can change how we feel and act. For example, someone struggling with anxiety might have irrational thoughts like, if I speak in public, I will embarrass myself, which can lead to avoidance behavior and increased anxiety. CBT helps people identify these unhelpful thoughts, challenge their validity, and replace them with more balanced, realistic thinking. The therapist may guide the client to engage in cognitive restructuring, a technique that involves examining evidence for and against their negative thoughts and exploring alternative, healthier perspectives. CBT also incorporates behavioral techniques, such as exposure therapy, where individuals are gradually exposed to situations they fear in a controlled and safe environment, helping them reduce avoidance behaviors. What makes CBT particularly effective is that it's a goal-oriented, practical approach. It equips individuals with skills they can apply outside of therapy sessions to manage their emotions and improve their well-being. Whether it's treating depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues, CBT is based on the idea that by changing the way we think, we can change the way we feel and behave. This approach has been extensively researched and shown to be highly effective, making it one of the most recommended therapies for people seeking to improve their mental health. 20. The theory of mind. One of the most powerful cognitive abilities we possess is the ability to understand and interpret the thoughts, feelings, and intentions of others. This ability is referred to as the theory of mind. It allows us to comprehend that others have beliefs, desires, and perspectives that may differ from our own. Jean Piaget was one of the first to explore the concept, but it was Simon Baron-Cohen who more formally developed the theory of mind concept, particularly in relation to autism spectrum disorders, ASD. The development of theory of mind begins in childhood. For instance, around the age of 3 or 4, children start to understand that others can hold beliefs that differ from their own. This is crucial for social interaction because it helps children understand why people act in certain ways, even if their actions don't align with their own personal desires or knowledge. Theory of mind enables us to empathize, predict behaviors, and even engage in complex social interactions, like lying, teaching, and making jokes. For example, if a friend tells you they're upset, you don't just know that they're feeling sad. You also understand why they feel that way, even if their feelings are based on something you didn't experience. People with autism spectrum disorder often struggle with theory of mind, making it more difficult for them to navigate social situations. Understanding and measuring. Theory of mind can also help in designing better educational strategies and therapeutic practices to assist individuals who face social challenges. It plays a fundamental role in human communication, shaping everything from empathy to moral reasoning, and it remains a critical area of research in developmental psychology. 21. The self-concept. At the heart of our identity is the self-concept, the mental image we have of ourselves. It shapes our behavior, guides our decision-making, and influences how we interact with others. The self-concept is built from a variety of experiences and feedback from the world around us. It's how we perceive our abilities, traits, and roles in different social contexts. Essentially, the self-concept is our answer to the question, who am I? Are we kind, intelligent, funny, successful? The answers to these questions form the foundation of our self-concept. Our self-concept is dynamic and evolves over time. It's influenced by our interactions with family, friends, and society, as well as our internal beliefs and feelings. For instance, if someone constantly receives positive feedback for their creativity, they are likely to view themselves as a creative person. However, if they are criticized or rejected, their self-concept might shift, leading to self-doubt or even a diminished sense of self-worth. The way we perceive our self-worth is central to our overall mental health. Those with a positive self-concept tend to have higher self-esteem, feel more confident, and are more likely to pursue and achieve their goals. The social self-concept, which reflects how we view ourselves in relation to others, plays a significant role in our relationships and social behaviors. In contrast, personal self-concept relates to how we view ourselves individually, often connected to our personal values and internal standards. In therapy, working on improving one's self-concept can lead to positive changes in self-esteem and mental health. Understanding the self-concept is also important in fields like marketing and education, as it influences motivation, goal setting, and consumer behavior. 22. The Bobo doll experiment. Albert Bandura's famous Bobo doll experiment revolutionized our understanding of how children learn behavior, particularly aggression. In the 1960s, Bandura conducted an experiment where children watched an adult behave aggressively toward an inflatable doll, the Bobo doll. Afterward, the children were given the opportunity to interact with the doll themselves. The results were striking. Children who had observed the aggressive behavior were more likely to imitate it, even in the absence of direct reinforcement. This experiment was pivotal in showing that learning can occur through observational learning, without direct experience or reinforcement. The Bobo doll experiment challenged the behaviorist view, which argued that all learning occurs through direct reinforcement. Bandura's findings demonstrated that people, particularly children, can learn behaviors simply by observing others. This has profound implications for understanding how aggression, violence, and even pro-social behaviors are transmitted in society. For example, media portrayals of violence can influence children's behavior, making them more likely to engage in similar acts. Bandura's social learning theory extended this idea, emphasizing the role of modeling, the process by which individuals imitate the behaviors of others they observe. The Bobo doll experiment highlighted that learning through observation is a powerful tool in shaping both negative and positive behaviors. In modern society, this theory is widely applied in everything from media studies to therapy. It helps explain how social norms, values, and even cultural attitudes are passed down through generations. 23. The theory of planned behavior. Have you ever planned to start a new habit, like exercising regularly or eating healthier, but struggled to follow through? The theory of planned behavior, developed by Itzhak Eisen, offers an explanation. According to this theory, our intentions are the key predictors of our behavior. The more intentional we are about a behavior, the more likely we are to perform it. But what shapes our intentions? According to Eisen, 3 factors influence our intentions: attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. Attitudes reflect our positive or negative evaluations of the behavior. If we believe exercising will improve our health and make us feel better, we are more likely to intend to do it. Subjective norms refer to the social pressure we feel to perform or avoid certain behaviors. If our friends or family value fitness, we may feel motivated to exercise, even if we're not personally enthusiastic about it. Perceived behavioral control involves how easy or difficult we believe it will be to perform the behavior. If we think it's too difficult to exercise due to time constraints or lack of resources, we're less likely to intend to do it, even if we know the benefits. This theory is widely used in psychology, health interventions, and behavior change programs because it explains how intention is often the first step toward behavior. It shows that while we may want to change, our actual behavior depends on how we perceive the difficulty of the task, how others influence us, and our attitudes toward the behavior. In fact, the theory of planned behavior has been applied to various areas, including dieting, smoking cessation, and environmental conservation, helping us understand the factors that influence our actions. 24. The spotlight effect. How often have you felt like all eyes are on you when you make a mistake in public or wear something new? That's the spotlight effect at work, a cognitive bias that makes us believe others are paying more attention to us than they actually are. Thomas Gilovich and his colleagues first identified the spotlight effect in the 1990s, demonstrating that people tend to overestimate the extent to which their actions and appearance are noticed by others. For example, if you spill coffee on your shirt at work, you might feel like everyone in the office is staring at the stain, when in reality, they're probably not paying as much attention as you think. The spotlight effect happens because we're so focused on ourselves in a given situation, thinking that others are as well. This is especially true when we feel embarrassed, self-conscious, or unsure of ourselves. Interestingly, the spotlight effect has both social and psychological implications. It can cause unnecessary anxiety, leading people to avoid situations where they think they'll be judged, even if the judgment is much less than they imagine. It can also drive behaviors like social comparison, constantly evaluating ourselves in relation to others, because we feel like everyone is watching and judging us. Understanding the spotlight effect helps us recognize that we don't have to be as self-conscious as we often think, and that other people are likely more focused on themselves than they are on us. 25. Self-fulfilling prophecies. What if the expectations we have for ourselves and others actually make those expectations come true? That's the idea behind self-fulfilling prophecies, a phenomenon first explored by sociologist Robert Merton. A self-fulfilling prophecy occurs when a belief or expectation about someone or something leads to behavior that causes that belief or expectation to come true. Essentially, what we believe will happen influences our actions, which in turn makes that belief a reality. A classic example is a teacher who believes a certain student is gifted. Because of this belief, the teacher may give the student more attention, encouragement, and opportunities, leading the student to perform better. On the flip side, if a teacher believes a student is lazy or uninterested, the teacher may unconsciously provide less support, causing the student's performance to decline. In both cases, the teacher's expectations played a pivotal role in shaping the student's outcomes. Self-fulfilling prophecies are everywhere, from personal relationships to career success. If you believe you're not good enough for a promotion, you may not put in the effort needed to succeed. But if you believe in your abilities and expect to be successful, you may take on challenges with confidence, leading to better outcomes. The key takeaway is that our beliefs and expectations shape our reality. By changing our mindset and cultivating positive beliefs, we can set the stage for greater success and fulfillment in life. Psychology is a dynamic and ever-evolving field, offering valuable insights into human behavior, cognition, and emotion. The ideas we've explored in this video represent just a glimpse into the complexities of the human mind. From behaviorism to self-fulfilling prophecies, these big ideas shape how we understand ourselves and others. They influence everything from the choices we make, to the way we form relationships, and interact with the world. As you go forward, remember that psychology is not just a science of the mind, it's a science of life. Every theory, every experiment, and every idea helps us better understand why we do what we do and how we can improve our lives and the lives of others. So, the next time you find yourself grappling with a decision, a relationship, or an emotional challenge, remember the wisdom of these 25 big ideas and see how they might apply to your own life. Thank you for watching, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating insights into psychology.